So if you do find yourself getting particularly nervous when you're up front in certain situations, might not be all of them, then there are things that we can think about that will really help make things easier for us on the day. Because, you know, ideally we're going to get to the point where we feel confident from the inside out. That's what we're trying to train here. And you're not going to worry about this stuff. But I think the more that we can do it at the moment to just keep life easier, the better. So there's 5 things we're going to cover in this short video. We're going to do notes, water, tech, height, clothing. Notes, water, tech, height, clothing. Just made up this little list, but having a list of 5 is quite helpful for my memory. So notes, I used to get visibly very nervous, and I would shake if I was holding paper. And actually because of that, I learned to give talks, presentations, things like that, without actually having anything physical to hold. So, you know, you might want to think about developing some techniques that work well for you. A real positive of this is it means then you're not constantly looking at a bit of paper, trying to work out how far you've got down a speech. The other thing is that if you are reading off of a script, it does come across as stilted. It's very difficult, I think, to speak naturally, as you just would with someone if you're reading off a speech. Now, there are some situations in which I totally understand it does make sense. There are things you can do to make it feel more natural and have more of a natural connection with your audience. But generally, I don't think it's a particularly helpful way to do things. So it might be that you just want to have some post-it notes you can put somewhere. But basically, if you're holding anything and you're likely to shake, and then you get into a whole thing in your head of like, oh my god, they can see that I'm shaking, blah 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 blah, like we want to not be doing that. Now, whatever you're using to keep track of things, and you know, this is helpful. Like, I have ADHD, so I go off track all the time, so having some kind of note is very helpful. Whatever it is, think about where that is physically going to be and how that might affect you physically, and if that like feels good or not. So for example, even if you were to have post-it notes, if you were to give a talk sitting down just with a chair, there's a very good chance that, because chairs are basically often made for taller men, that means that your hips are going to be higher than your knees, and your knees are going to be tilting down. So if you need to hold something in your lap, it might start getting a little bit awkward, and like depending on what you're wearing, you might not be comfortable like with crossing your leg over, like certain clothing, as we'll come on to, is just like less helpful for this. So again, like if you've got like a larger piece of paper, that might not be very helpful for that kind of situation. And also like you don't want to be like keeping like reaching for something, like that's not very helpful either. So yeah, have a little think about what you're using and what your constraints are going to be. And it's completely fine to like think in advance and ask for anything that you need. Yeah, that is your responsibility. I think often women feel bad about asking for what they need, but this is about, you know, you faffing less and feeling more comfortable, which is going to give the audience a better experience. You're going to communicate better with them. So like, of course, it's totally fine. It's like, it is the right thing to do to ask for any changes you might need. I used to work with someone who was particularly petite, and so she really had to think about things like if she didn't have something to put her feet on, if she was on a particularly not even a particularly high chair, but just quite normal height chairs really, like her feet would be dangling off of this seat, and that just didn't make her feel very comfortable at all. It made her feel like a kind of little girl actually, so she often had to think about that. So there we go. Where are your notes gonna go, if you have them at all? And the thing is, if you don't have any, like you might want to get to the point where you're like, well, I just don't need them at all. But what happens if you get interrupted, or you get a bit flustered, or a fire alarm goes off, or something happens in the audience, like someone faints and that has to get responded to? Like, what happens if something goes on and you completely go off track, or you need to start again and you lose your way? Like, what are you going to do to help with that? So there's that. What was the other one? Notes, water. I think water was the next one. So yeah, like you might get a dry throat. This might particularly happen if you're getting a little bit nervous. And so where are you going to have water? And importantly, what are you going to be drinking out of, so it's less likely to fall down yourself? I don't know why, right? But when I am public speaking,
when I'm presenting, I'm so much more likely to have some kind of drama with my water vessel. And the next thing I know, it's like all down my chest. That's one of the reasons as well why I'll just use water and not like coffee or tea or anything. So if I'm having it beforehand, it's very likely to end up on what I'm wearing. And water, you can just go and dry it off a lot more easily without leaving a stain in the toilets with a hand dryer. So yeah, where's your water going to go, and how are you going to make sure that you're not faffing too much or needing to move around? Water is really good for making yourself take a little pause as well. So I think it's very helpful for that. I've got a cup of tea. I'm not keeping to my own advice here, but we are just on social media. It can be really good just to get you to pause for a second. This is what happens when I don't have my list. What was the next one? Gonna go for height. That might not be the right order, but we'll see. So lecterns, chairs, all of that, microphones, these are things that are often set for taller men, or even just like average height men who are normally a little bit taller than women. So you do need to think about whether that is going to work for you. So for example, like a lectern, like a fixed size lectern, might mean literally that like your head is just above. And what are you going to do then? Has the venue got anything else that you can use? You definitely want to find out what height it's going to be beforehand. And again, if you're using like a script or quite detailed notes, or you've got a laptop that you need to use for moving through slides or something like that, like where are things going to be, and is it going to be a height that like works for you practically and also doesn't create like a barrier between you and the audience? There's a real habit I think we can have of standing behind a lectern and sort of shielding ourselves from people, but then they can't see our body language as well, which, you know, you might think like, well, that's a good thing, I don't want them to see me. But yeah, things can get a little bit stilted, and we want to have a sense of kind of like openness and trust with our audience too. So think about that. I mentioned the thing around the chairs and making sure the height is right. Microphones can really faff around. I mean, it's a good job these days that I know this was about tech. Yeah, so it's kind of a similar thing around tech, and it's also height. We kind of like segue into that neatly. But yeah, microphones, if you're still using one of the you know, handheld ones, the ones with like a stand, again, they're often set too high for you, and there can be a lot of fiddling around with that. So make sure you've got time to do that. And like tech does go wrong, so you do, or it just takes longer to faff around with it. So I think it's really helpful to make sure you're not cramming your time so full of things you need to say that you don't have time for the kind of initial fiddling around. And of course, do a practice one if you can, just to make sure that everything's getting set up nicely. It's really important as well that you have a tech-free option. Do not assume that you'll be able to get your slides up. Do not assume you'll be able to show that nice little video. You must be able to deliver without any tech necessary. So for example, if you're reliant on your slides to remember what you're going to say, like that is not good enough. You need to make sure that you're not going to be like flapping around or unable to deliver if your laptop breaks on the way, or there's a problem getting it, you know, linked up to like linked up to the screen or whatever. So you definitely need to know what you're going to do if that fails. What did we say? Okay, so we've had notes, water, height, tech, and oh yeah, clothing. So depending on whether you're sitting or standing will make a really big difference as to what you want to wear. So some dresses work super nicely if they're a bit more slim fitting if you're standing up, but as soon as you're sat down they just get a little bit more uncomfortable, don't they? Or maybe you've put on a bit of weight. Like I put on 2 stone over the 18 months from when my dad was first diagnosed to a while after he died. I was just like binge eating biscuits, and well, my main thing, to be honest, was like cream-based pastries from M&S and Waitrose, like shoe buns, like chocolate eclairs. I was just like cramming my mouth with them. It's like I will eat away the pain and the sadness. Oh. So yeah, there are certain things now, like certain dresses now, if I wear them, I just have much more of a visible tummy. And yes, We would all love to be in an era where we don't mind about that so much, but it does just make me self-conscious, yeah, because it's like an adjustment. And I, in all honesty, I prefer not to be the weight that I am now. I'm just going to say that, and I think it's really important for you to know it's okay that, you know, if you're not comfortable with something around your body, that's okay. Like, don't force yourself into a situation where you have to pretend that you're okay. Like, so wear stuff that is going to be comfortable, whether or not you are standing, sitting, moving around. And again, don't assume because you've decided, well, I'm just going to stand on the day, that's what you're going to be able to do. Like, who knows? You might like trip up on the way there and hurt your ankle, and actually you do need to sit down. Or you might be planning to sit down and you get there and actually the chair's broken, or the chair that was the right height for you is broken, or it's just disappeared, or whatever. So, you know, the only thing that's certain is uncertainty. So make sure you're wearing something that you feel comfortable with in kind of all scenarios. And also, you're much more likely to be sweating. So, like, think about, like, you know, what happens if you're sweating and like that's then really visible in your clothing, and you realize that just before you like walk in, like, what are you going to do then? So yeah, material's important. Is it going to work for you if you get really hot and sweaty because you're nervous, or like there's no aircon and you're just really hot? And in certain situations, I would either change when I get there, or I would have like a backup. A classic thing happened to me a little while ago. We'll just have some way of like cleaning the thing. So basically, I was like, I had these like really nice white pumps that I was wearing in Cambridge, on the way to Cambridge, and I managed, I don't know how, to like stand in some poo on the way there. I can't remember if it's bird poo or dog poo. Anyway, it was just like a whole thing. I then had to go and get some like wet wipes from the shop and try and sort out the situation, blah, 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 blah. It would have just been better if I'd worn a different pair of shoes while I was traveling there, and then put on my nice white pumps, particularly for like white pumps. And again, like, we want to be in a situation where maybe we don't matter so much about this. But of course, if it's distracting for you or distracting for the audience, or it makes you feel less comfortable, then we want to be sorting it out so it's just like less of an issue, and we and like everyone else can just focus on the really important things. When I'm going to Cambridge for several days to run workshops and have meetings, like, I'll take more clothes than I need to, just in case like something happens. And again, I'm a bit of a klutz, so I'll often get food on things. Might get wine down your dress at dinner, something like that. So yeah, have a few options. And I think that's it. So I hope those are all helpful. As I said, like, we're really trying to build confidence from the inside out here. So I don't want you to get too caught up in these external things. But while we're still working with nervousness, of course, it's like helpful to think about this stuff and to plan ahead so that you're not getting hyper fixated in terms of like how you're coming across. So I hope that's useful for you. Out of those 5, like, what are you actually gonna action the next time that you are presenting? I'd love to know in the comments, out of those 5, which you're going to think about for the next one, you know, because there's always more that we can do. But if you just choose one action that you can take and let me know, that will be really, really helpful for you. See you in the next episode. Bye.